go! Good evening. Welcome to the Steel City Podcast. I'm Leanne Lohman. I'm joined tonight by Zach Franciscus. Zach, how are you?
Every time we think we're going to have a nice, calm thing, we're like, let's just recap wide receivers, see what's it's thrown into disarray.
Right,
every time.
Right? Like life gets crazy. Look, before we go any further with today's show, there is like huge news, and I have to bring this up or I would be super remiss if I didn't wish my pal a happy birthday a few days early, because by the time we film our next show, Zach will have already finished his rotation around the sun since his birthday's on Friday. So happy birthday, Zach. I love doing this with you. I hope you have an amazing birthday and such a good day. And I hope that somehow that equates to a Steelers win in our next or at least look, fuck the win. Just like the guys look good, right? Like guys look good,
healthy.
No injuries, big fat contract for Cam Heyward. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Like Zach said, it has not been a quiet week where we just wrap up camp and we're like, oh, they put on some pads today and camp is going to be wrapping up. And Aaron Rodgers is so sad to leave Latrobe and wishes he could do it all again. And now we've got all this stuff with Cam and with Boz and Calvin Austin and his dogs. And then on top of that, we're still going to break down the preseason game that we went through, which seems like a distant memory in comparison to everything else that's happened, and talk about the wide receiver group. We've been talking about a position group every week, and this week's group is the wide receivers group. So we will dive right into it. We have a few little kind of notes, like stuff to go over. There have been some injuries that have gone on. We saw Will Howard is still working through stuff with his hand, his throwing hand. I saw today that there was a tweet that went out about how he's still trying to, be able to stay engaged with the team and be out there and all of those things. So that's good news. I'm glad he's progressing. Darius Slay had a little bit of what looked like almost like a stinger or something the other day where he was hurt. We thought Calvin Austin was injured. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And Alex Highsmith is still working through his groin injury. So hopefully with Alex, who's a solid veteran at this point, some of this is, less about putting too much pressure on that groin, making sure that he's good and that he's healthy.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think having guys like Nick Herbig and Jack Sawyer and all of them and Malik Harrison waiting to take reps, he's like, listen, I have time to relax a bit.
Yeah. I saw that Dulac did put out some tweets specifically about Will Howard, that he said it's short term and it's possible that he could still play in the preseason. So, it sounds like they're just trying not to rush him into action. But that did lead to them signing veteran quarterback Logan Woodside. But we're going to talk about the quarterbacks. Logan Woodside knows Arthur Smith from Tennessee and Atlanta. But we're going to talk about the guys that played in the preseason game. And boy, oh boy, that was interesting. That was interesting.
It really was. Number one, I am glad that the Steelers are back to being, if not the team, one of the teams with the best backup quarterback in the NFL. I don't think there should be any question right now. And for anyone who doesn't remember or wasn't alive during that, Charlie Batch, I talk about him a lot when it comes to the pinnacle of backups. Mason Rudolph's quickly approaching that, because any time now, if something happens to Aaron Rodgers, I'm not worried about that. And that's what you want heading into a year with an aging quarterback. And then Skylar Thompson comes along and gets everyone worried that Will Howard isn't going to make rosters and just throwing stuff into disarray again.
Right.
And Skylar Thompson looked very, very good, but I will have everybody just remember when he came in. So everything with a grain of salt, and then if you need reminders, go look up Pony's tweets about Kenny Pickett from that preseason, and that's a good way to remind you.
That'll like take you back down. That's like instant gravity, right? Like if you're soaring so high, you go read a couple Pony tweets, and it immediately is like gravity boots. So I saved this tweet. I started to delete it, but I thought this was really interesting. I saw that Jack Sperry had done a long diatribe on Twitter even yesterday or the day before about how all this stuff with Calvin Austin, he really thinks that it's not this, quote, minor injury, that there's something else going on. And he thought it was that Calvin Austin was maybe holding out for more money, given where he is in his contract with what's going on with Cam and Boz. He's like, hey, maybe this is my time to get paid too, but that's not the case. So Calvin Austin, came out yesterday. He's got a good 10 court. It is like the lowest level of court in Allegheny County. So this is not like serious criminal charges. It sounds like his dog maybe bit somebody or bit somebody else's dog. I did not have any clarity on it. Maybe something's out there I missed. I don't know if that's why he's missing practice. I can't understand why he'd miss practice for that reason. That's not something the NFL's going to suspend you over, right? This is like almost like a civil court matter or something.
Yeah,
so maybe he's injured and this thing happened to happen at the same time.
I think it's both. I think you're right. It is small level. The problem is, from what I understand, and it's very minimal understanding, he didn't appear at something he was supposed to appear at. And that kicked this whole thing off. So he would have just appeared and all that. But I think Mike Tomlin today grouped him in with the day-by-day people in the We'll See, which to Mike Tomlin could mean anything from a sprained ankle that I didn't feel like playing him. So.
Right. Yeah, there's no telling what that means. So, I mean, I guess let's just rip the Band-Aid off and talk about Cam Heyward and Boz. Boz has got to be like, thank you, Cam. You're totally overshadowing me. Nobody will say anything about me wanting more money because you're here. So Cam Heyward came out. He spoke. He's been very candid with the media, which is not something he always is. I mean, look, Cam is always a good guy with the media. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like he wasn't like last year when stuff was going on, he was kind of vague about things. But this time he was pretty upfront. He said he talked to the team about this back in February. And if that's true, and I have no reason to believe Cam Heyward would lie. He has no reason to lie. That's concerning. I know that the fan base is like going nuts, which is wild to me that you're freaking out over another man's paycheck. I don't quite understand it.
It isn't. I'm just. I keep going over what we were talking about earlier. That I'm convinced that this is a secret pact between Boswell and Heyward to just make Mark Madden's head explode. Because the amount of things that, by the way, just so you know, Twitter doesn't edit curse words out. When Mark Madden tweets, he edits his own stuff out of his own tweets. Dude's just
he does.
So, but this is
his mom's basement, so maybe she doesn't like cursing, so he has to add the make the Q and fuck a little asterisk. I know he does that to himself. I do have him muted. We are going to talk about Mark Madden and his wild tweets a little bit later. But what are your thoughts on Cam? I mean, I think a lot of people's like knee-jerk reaction, and I think this is understandable. It's like, look, you just got paid last year, and we just extended you. You wanted to be extended. You fought for it last year, right? Now you're here asking for it again. I keep hearing the Steelers never negotiate with somebody with 2 years left on their contract, but Antonio Brown would say otherwise. So, I mean, there is a precedent where it's been done. It's just not common. And look, the reality is they can do anything, right? I saw Mark Cabali say there was 0 chance, a 3% chance, I think is what he said, that they would start the season without Cam Heyward. He doesn't think that'll happen. Cam did say that he thinks he doesn't see a world where they start the season and Cam's not playing. Cam said there is a possibility where that could happen.
There's a theme tonight that I'm going with, which is breathe before you react. And a lot of people did not do that. And you're right. The first reaction is, number one, millionaires complaining. So right off the bat, there's no pity there. And number two, you just got paid a lot more than a lot of people thought you deserved, regardless of your all-star season. So, but I'm with you. I am perfectly fine with this. There's so many reasons for this, but number one, no one other than the fans and media are worried about this. Aaron Rodgers was talking about how TJ Watt and him were hanging out and having each other's backs and joking. He was hanging out next to Mike Tomlin and standing around. And he's in every single meeting. Cameron Heyward has not missed a meeting. He has not left the facility. He is there. It's a hold in. So, and I agree. I don't why would Cam Heyward go out of his way for a franchise like Pittsburgh, call a media thing, and then just lie straight to their faces, knowing the Steelers probably had stuff to back up if he was lying? I don't think if this drags on, it's going to make the front office look worse than it's going to make Cam Heyward. And Cam Heyward already proved that. I mean, I'm not going to be on the wrong end of a Cam Heyward thing again. I was already proved wrong last year. And for anyone who didn't remember that, I doubted him badly last season. I'm not going to doubt Cam again. And if he wants to get paid and move stuff around, let that happen.
Right. And we already had like Corey Hayward on Twitter, like eyes on us on the podcast about this topic. So look, Corey, I would tell you to your face if I thought that this was like a really terrible thing that was happening, right? I think there has been bad business decisions. I was really shocked by like how many random like non-Steeler fan accounts, like, I don't know, I'm probably saying the wrong one, so I apologize if it wasn't you, but like ML football or something like that. And then they're like, oh, cry for Cam, he's not getting a raise. Like, I was surprised how many non-Steeler accounts were like super salty about this. Like that Dove, whatever the hell his name is, that's not even like a real person. Like he posted something really snarky about it. I'm like, where do you get off? Like, do you give this same energy to like every other like guy that's like demanding were you doing this for Lamar and Jamar Chase and whoever, you know what I mean? Micah Parsons, like all these guys are asking for contracts. So is this just because Cam got one last year? Like, I don't know. This is how I look at it. And maybe I'm way off base. So if you're watching and you think I am, tell me what you think. But this is how I feel. Last year, so Cam was injured 2023, missed a significant amount of time. So last year when he wanted the extension, everybody's thing was like, well, we don't even know if he's broken. You know, he might not even be same old Cam, right? And that was a valid concern, right? Like he's older, was a serious injury. Like I understood that. But Cam came out last year. So they gave him this contract, and the Steelers made sure that they had a way to get out of this contract, like an escape hatch, if Cam was terrible in 2024. Like they made sure they had a way to get out of this contract. And he didn't need it. He was an all-pro. I mean, he had a banging season, right? So to me, if Cam signed a contract knowing that they could get out of it, if he didn't perform well, the same, like the flip side of that has to be true. So like if you perform at some super high level, then you have to pay him, commensurate with what his peers who are performing at that level make. Like I saw the number, he's like the 33rd highest paying defensive tackle or something. And like, look, we don't pay based on age in this league. You pay based on performance, and Cam performed.
Yep. Oh, 100%. And the biggest thing that I think people really overlook is I don't think Cam wanted any of this out in the public. I don't think any of this was supposed to be dealt with in front of cameras, in front of reporters. And the second it leaked, he was like, well, now I got to deal with this.
Look, he does a weekly podcast. He says he talked to the team in February. He could have done the Myles Garrett and started on his podcast talking about how he deserves more money and they should pay him and all of this. And never once did he do any of that. So I don't understand why all of a sudden he's the bad guy in this situation.
There isn't. And I'm sure that every player, because everyone who goes on an NFL field and somewhere in their head has to think they're the best at what they do. That's the only way you can compete at that. Yeah. So I'm sure in front offices, the amount of people that say, I'm going to be an all-pro, wait till I break a record. But the ones who fulfill and come through on it are the ones that I think are rare. And if Cam did do that to the because I'm sure there maybe was like one or two small details left out, but nothing that would change the story where Cam's like, I'm going to be an all-pro and you're going to owe me more money. And they're like, yeah, okay, Cam, everyone says that. Right. And I'm betting he's just sitting around. He's like, I'm going to go to practice. They're going to call. I'm going to go to practice. They're going to call. They're not calling. They're not. And the way I look at the Heywards from the little I know about them and Hard Knocks and all that, it's a very family-oriented team. He's a very family-oriented guy. I guarantee they sat down and said, guys, this is about our family. This is about the next generations. This is about right now.
For this family.
Exactly. So this, for people who don't understand, whenever it gets to this point in a player's career and they've achieved what Cam has other than like a Super Bowl, they're looking at, when I'm done, the NFL is not going to take care of me anymore. For anyone who thinks when players are done, the NFL gives stipend, they don't. You're done. You're done.
Nothing.
Yeah. So Cam is getting ready, and the NFL is not shy about just cutting people whenever they need to.
Look, the Eagles went to the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley, right? They got him on a contract. It was a fine contract, right? It wasn't like record breaking necessarily, or I mean, it wasn't like outrageously huge. Saquon helped that team win a Super Bowl. And what did the Eagles do? They didn't say, well, your contract still got 2 years left on it. They said, you know what? We're going to go ahead and give you some more money right now. Let's go ahead and work out that extension because you performed in such a way that you deserve that. You came here and you proved to us that you have the gas in the tank, that you are that guy, right? That the Giants fucked up badly letting you go. You came here and you made a difference for this team, and Cam makes a difference. And I don't know how you deny that. I saw a couple of fan reactions that I wanted to pull. Brandon Wallace, who works for Steeler Nation, said, if you don't want to pay Cam Heyward and Chris Boswell, you don't want to win. That's an all-pro at 36. The other's the best cooker in football. The Steelers have the cap space. Stop overthinking it. I mean, I got to agree with them. Cap space doesn't win games. We're not going to win any more games because we have extra money. Players do. You got to make Cam Heyward a happy man. Exactly.
And Boswell won games on his own. And not only that, I don't know how to word this other than this. This is on the Steelers. When you suddenly decide that you're going to change how you do business in a single offseason, other players are going to pick up. They're like, oh, you're spending $100 million. Wait, you're doing that? We're doing this now. We're Aaron Rodgers is on our team now. Okay, in that case, you know what? If you're shelling out, and I wasn't Joe Rutter. I'm really sorry. Someone was on 93.7, and I'm forgetting their name right now. They were a picker reporter, and they said, listen, there's a possibility whether he performs well or not, Jalen Ramsey is getting a raise next year. Cam Heyward knows that's happening. He wants to get his money before. He's thinking ahead. The Steelers flipped the switch. And don't get me wrong, I love this. I love the, treading the line between future and now. But when you do that, someone savvy like Cam Heyward is going to say, okay, me now. Now me. Yeah, and not only that, you promised. Other than saying, no, Cam, we're not going to pay you. I don't care if they giggled or not. Straight up saying anything but no to him at that point is Cam saying, okay, you want me to prove it. I'm going to do it. So
yeah. I don't know. I keep going back to that. I go back, you look at Boz, and like Boz quietly, while everybody else talked about Justin Tucker, Boz quietly became the best kicker in the NFL. He's not flashy. He's not, you know what I mean? He's just quiet. He's consistent. He supports this team. He's there. He's reliable. He's healthy. He's all of the things that you need him to be. Do you know what I mean? And he's had his ups and downs in Pittsburgh, and he doesn't not just head about that, So to me, I think that like when it comes to Boz, like it's a no-brainer. I don't care what his contract says. You have to pay him. And I think sometimes look, one of the things I love about the Steelers is that they have a way that they do things, right? I think the Jerry Jones method of running a football team where you have no idea what's going to happen or when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen is chaos. Like I couldn't work for somebody like that where everything is so unpredictable. So I like that the Steelers have a way that they do business, but there's nothing wrong with saying this is an exceptional circumstance and we need to look at this a little differently and do something a little bit differently, right? We've done that with other things we've done, where we've made changes that people are saying, well, this isn't what the Steelers usually do. We've been doing that nonstop since Omar Khan took over. And I just think that this has to be one of those things.
Oh, 100%. And I'm wondering if there was just a little respect given to TJ by these guys by saying, okay, you get it done first. You get your money. You've earned it more than us at this point. Once you get it. So, because apparently there's what did Aaron Rodgers say, a bromance between TJ and Cam, and if TJ isn't mad that Cam Heyward's getting money, I shouldn't be mad about it.
Why do I have a right to be mad about it? But see, we said that. I said that. You said that about TJ when we talked about him and his contract and people talking about how much he deserves to get. First of all, I still am going to maintain that I don't understand why a bunch of like computer warriors have any right talking about what somebody gets paid at their job. I think that's freaking bizarre. I would never occur to me to go to Zach's job and be like, I know he texts me during the day, so I think you're paying him a little too much. I mean, it's weird, right? Why do we feel like we have this right to like talk about other grown people's livelihoods? Like, it's so weird to me. And then you're going to act like everybody else in this league isn't making millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like, if you want to be disgusted about his salary or contract, it's not Cam Heyward's. Like, that's probably not the most egregious one in the NFL, right? So yeah. I find that whole thing bizarre. But we talked about this with TJ, this idea of like part of this is this respect, right? And it feels like that to me. It felt like that to me last year with Cam. Like, you have to make this right with this guy. This is a respect thing. He's earned this. And then now I can look at this and say, you know what? Not only has he been this one helmet guy for all these years for this team, but now he also was an all-pro at in his mid-30s. Like, that's unheard of. And you go out there and you do exceptional things and you reap exceptional rewards.
Exactly. And if people don't understand the importance Cam Heyward is, not just to any defense, but to the Steelers defense and all that, that's just fundamental football you don't understand. Yeah. I can't explain it to you at that point then.
Yeah. I have this one too from Amanda and then one from Ed Thompson. Cam was at that game early. Every person, he's out there for practice before the game, out there, took a selfie, signed everything that anybody brought him, to every Steelers fan that approached him, that came down to this, edge of the field, at the edge of the bleachers to talk to him. Amanda, my pal, said, I just don't get the hate for Cam. The guy's a great player, likely future Hall of Famer, excellent leader on and off the field, and does a ton of work in the community. He asked for a raise after outperforming his contract, and y'all are acting like he shot your grandma. I mean, it's a great spot on. I just don't, it's just crazy to me. I just don't understand it.
That is, and it would fly in the face of because Steelers know that Cam has all of the leverage right now. If you even take the performance off the table, all of that, if you say no to Cam Heyward, then I guarantee Chris Boswell is going to dig in more. And if suddenly you don't have Chris Boswell and Cam Heyward on your team, why'd you bring Aaron Rodgers in here? Everything starts to fall apart. So just
right.
And I trust Mark Caboli. The last thing the Steelers want to do is wreck the vibe of training camp ending. Everyone has a couple weeks off. You don't want Cam mulling this over with his team because the price is not going to go down.
No.
So get it done right now, and let's have a couple weeks where we can just talk about stuff.
Right. Just be ready. So before we put a pin in the Cam Heyward stuff, hit me with a little drunk uncle intro. I've got to bring these up now. We need to get this out of the way, out of my system, so I don't have to think about him anymore.
I like that.
Look, I don't usually do Mark Madden. It is low-hanging fruit. He could be the drunk uncle every week. I have him muted on Twitter because I just can't stand him. But I had to go pull these today because something is wrong with him. Like, who is this obsessed with somebody else's salary? Like, this doesn't even make sense to me. Cam Heyward is a whining baby. He signed his contract. Now what he sees is a bad contract just 11 months ago. He bet on himself. He'd have played his deal out. I mean, it's crazy to me. He's no victim, not even remotely. If the one helmet guys don't win, fuck all. There he is with his self-editing and explode with greed every chance they get. Then what's the point of a one helmet guy? Where's the glory? If you figured out how full of shit this all is, I'll hang up and listen. He never listens. Don't think that's happening. There's obviously more to this. The team fawns over, quote, one helmet guys. We're supposed to, but Cam Heyward hasn't won a fucking thing. Berated Rodgers for not making up his mind, and the Steelers are supposed to be all in. He's not. He's an ass. Then take it out on poor Connor. What did Connor even do? Cam's brother is a mascot. Like, that's not a nice thing to say. He is not a legitimate NFLer. Don't forget that. No other team would have him. Like Derek Watt, look at the whole picture. Ouch.
And Derek Watt taking strays.
Yeah,
Goodness gracious.
That is rough. And, I heard Aaron Rodgers. Look, I'm not saying Connor Heyward is like the greatest NFL player. I'm not even saying he's at Cam's level. But Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers had some really high praise for him and the work he's been putting in this camp. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. I do want to talk real quick about this idea about the comment that Cam made about Aaron Rodgers. We brought this up a few times. Cam very publicly said, like, we're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You either want to be here or you don't, right? And now everybody is somehow using that comment as, this notion that Cam is violating his own edict, or he's two-faced or disingenuous, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. To me, they seem like apples and oranges things. Like, there's a big difference between holding out on a team and teasing them about whether you're coming to the team or not coming and not signing a contract, and outplaying your previous contract and asking for a raise, something 50 million Americans do like every week.
This is an interesting situation because I agree with you, just not in the specific, because I actually think what Cam said and what is happening now are connected. I think the team went to Cam and said, have our back. Have our back with this Aaron thing. Do your recruiting. He's like, you want me to recruit? This is how I'll recruit. Steelers. Steeler way. And he just pounded that home. Yeah. And then they turned around and didn't pay him. And he's like, I went to bat for what this team is. I went out there on a podcast. I didn't have to do it. And so I think, to me, that he went out on not on a limb, but he didn't have to do that. I mean, Cam doesn't, he didn't seem like he wanted to do any recruiting. And yet he's still, Aaron Rodgers mentions that quote from Cam. And I guarantee when he heard that, he's like, yeah, that's a guy I want to play for. Yeah. So this is yet again on the Steelers. If everything Cam says is true, and like you said, we have no reason not to trust the Walter Payton Man of the Year.
Right.
So yeah, front office, just pay the man.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, maybe the front office felt like, this would go away, or maybe they thought Cam was joking, hence the snickering or whatever and giggling, whatever it was. I don't know, but wild to me, absolutely wild. It'll be very interesting to see how it pans out. Promise we're not going to spend the whole rest of the show talking about this. Let's transition into a little tea dish items I've got here and talk about these before we talk about the preseason. I love this. I saw Ryan Clark said he had a chance to chop it up with Jack Sawyer and couldn't have been more impressed. Coaches spoke highly of him as well. Just a solid player and human. Everything you saw at Ohio State is real. I thought that was an awesome thing to hear. I know that Ryan Clark is a little bit of a, what do you call it? Like a, you love him or you hate him kind of guy. Yep. But I love him. I think he's great. I trust and respect his opinion. The man knows football, whether you like him or not.
He is. I think the worst thing you can say about him is every once in a while his opinions are a little kind of talking headish. And if that's the worst thing you can say about someone working in the media, that's a good reporter. So, and come on, Ryan Clark came from a time in the NFL that will never come back. The Ryan Clark hits, oh my goodness gracious, he'd be thrown out of every game.
I love to hear those stories where he talks about like how their job was to go out there and put guys to sleep. Like that was their mission. I love that stuff. I saw this, and I mean, look, Cordarrelle Patterson, man, we got to love you supporting the team. Here he is supporting the fellas. He said still going to be there for his guys. I love that. Posted on Instagram during the preseason game that he was watching. I thought that was good stuff.
Is that the Tom Brady jersey up there? I just see a 12. Is that his? Right. Oh, okay. I'm not a Brady fan, but yeah, Brady gives me a jersey. Yeah, I'm hanging that up.
Yeah, maybe I'm not ashamed to say. Maybe he did a jersey exchange with Brady. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah. So let's talk about that preseason game against Jacksonville and kind of the idea of like the winners and losers, how the offense and defense looked. I certainly felt like Travis Hunter had a little bit of a welcome to the NFL moment during that game. He got to see what it was like to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, I'm sorry that all these new Jaguars are still suffering under the terrible towel curse, but that's what you get.
They are now. For everyone who did not watch the preseason game and just look at that picture, Caleb Johnson is one of the few people who definitely looked like a rookie. So that was they cherry picked a little bit for that. Great picture, but Caleb Johnson, and yet again, I any chance I have to throw Mark Madden under. The only positive thing he had this entire week to say was about Caleb Johnson.
Right.
So it's just weird.
Yeah, I thought that was strange too. Look, I thought the preseason game all in all looked well. I thought Caleb Johnson had some moments where he looked. You saw some of what obviously the Steelers must have liked about him, right? You saw some of that. You also saw some moments where you're like, yeah, this kid has never played an NFL game before. And I don't know, to me that feels reasonable. I thought overall, like the performances were good. We talked about this before the game. I'm sure you talked about it when you did your game preview, like trying very hard not to do the like Kenny Pickett thing where I get too in my head about preseason. Like this is preseason, this doesn't count. So I tried to take away like score and all of those things and instead just kind of look at like mechanics and how those groups were coming together. I thought that stuff started to look good. I was really happy to see Cole Holcomb back out there. I thought that was amazing to finally see him back out on the field. I'm so happy for him. I hope he makes a 53-man roster. He's always been one of my favorites, and I was sad that we kind of got our time got cut short. So,
he did great. It was a game where very few people looked bad. Just the people who quote unquote looked bad, there were rookies, and there were rookie situations. But Jack Sawyer looked great. I think Peyton Wilson did really well. He was a little nervous because he had the green dot on his helmet. And I think he did really well because if you were impressed with how the quote unquote first team defense, which was the second team technically, performed, that was a lot of that was Peyton Wilson. Yaya Black. That guy, I don't know how we go, fifth round pick? How did we get him in the fifth round? He was just deciding when to move people to the side. The amount, but what I was talking about earlier in the show is why the theme is take a breath before you do stuff is I was talking to Leanne about I was going to go look at the offensive line because I was kind of confused on why people were praising Broderick when in my eyes, it didn't look like he did well. And I did a quick pass through when I was ready to go on Twitter and just lambast the guy and just let everybody know, all the things from last year that we saw, they're back. And I took a deep breath and I went back and I rewatched everything like 3 or 4 times. Broderick Jones is improving. I did not think I would say that. And not just in small ways. He played 15 snaps. And there was 1 or 2 that I didn't see any of this last year. I'm going to show you one quick play. And this is a fun little thing because during the season, I'll do film review and studies so you get a little preview of it. I didn't see Broderick Jones at all last season finish plays. I didn't see him show an edge. I didn't see him show a nastiness. He was missing something like that. So I wanted to see that. And in 15 plays, I was really happy about how he finished this particular one, if I can actually figure out where it is. Oh, there it is. Oh, wait, not that one. See, this is what happens. Why I prepare. So Broderick Jones is number 70. No, you're good. Broderick Jones is number 77 for anybody who does not know. He's going to be on the left-hand side of this. And you're looking for the finish of Broderick Jones on this. There's a nastiness. There, right there. He didn't do any of that last season. There was none of that last season. And the amount of times Leanne had to listen to me complain about this, about Broderick Jones deciding when plays were done and just not finishing through would make Zach Frazier blush. So seeing him show that kind of grit, it made me excited because probably out of everyone on the team, I was most concerned with Broderick Jones. A lot rode on what he was able to do. So we're just right off the bat, very positive things.
Yeah. Look, it wasn't a perfect game for him by any means, but I think we talked all off season about one of the critical things was going to be seeing that offensive line take like a step forward. You know what I mean? Him in particular as kind of the linchpin for all of that, really take a step forward. And to me, I saw that growth in the limited amount of time we saw him on the field. So I felt like that was good. Who were your other winners in the game?
The one that everyone is suddenly convinced there's a depth quarterback thing is Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson did really well. And it's not just the results of what he did. He looked calm. And what Mike Tomlin and the coaches are looking for is more than results. Sometimes, can you command that offense? How smooth is it from the huddle to the play, to the next play, to the next play, 2-minute drive, all that stuff? Because I'll be honest, anybody who came out of this game saying, wow, Mason looked really good, that was surprising, you don't know Mason Rudolph, because that's just Mason Rudolph playing football. He's having fun. He's back in Pittsburgh. There's a load off his shoulders, and he's getting paid to be a backup again. So there has to be something good with that. Kenneth Gainwell didn't impress me as much as I was expecting him to. I wanted him to be the veteran or the more experienced presence to Caleb Johnson. And there was a couple of times in pass protection, I didn't see him kind of pick things up. But the positive was that offensive line was on top of that. If there was missed pass protections, then someone saw it. Someone was moving over there. Derek Harmon is a beast. Derek, there might be a reason why Cam is floating all of this, because maybe if he knows that if it goes a game or two into the season, knock on wood that it doesn't, that it's not going to, take everything out of this defense. When I say Derek Harmon is very, very good, Derek Harmon is a he is already probably past second-year football player as far as just raw what he looks like. So I'm really excited about them.
Yeah, I thought Harmon looked great. I had a few notes that I had pulled from a couple different people about things they saw. Amanda's winners for the night were Skylar Thompson, Beanie Bishop, which I thought was interesting, Sean Williams, and Trey Sermon. Arthur Smith earlier talking about the Steelers targeting Roman Wilson earlier against the Jaguars. He said it was intentional to get him going early. He deserves that. Rewarded him. We've seen a lot of progress. I thought that was huge. I thought he was a big winner that night, seeing him out there catching balls, looking like he knows the plays. Like, that was big stuff. I mean, especially with all that nonsense last year about how he couldn't learn the playbook or whatever. Skylar Thompson had a great night. I thought that was interesting. It's going to put the Steelers in an interesting quarterback situation. I mean, obviously Aaron Rodgers is going to start and Mason Rudolph is going to be his backup. But then it does leave you wondering what will happen with Will Howard and Skylar Thompson. Like, it's hard to imagine cutting a guy that just put up a performance like that. The Steelers aren't going to want to let go of Will Howard, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out.
It will be. I'm hoping we're not going to lose one of the two based on putting them on a practice squad and being signed away. But Skylar Thompson still has a real uphill battle. He has to have two performances in the two remaining games like he had in that first one. And he has to hope Will Howard plays in that third game and plays badly. That's the only way, and even then they'd probably sit Skylar Thompson and said, listen, we drafted Will for a reason. I'm sorry. We brought you in as the third. And for anyone wondering, the Steelers don't keep four quarterbacks. No. There is no realm on the face of this planet, the Steelers. But, by the way, I forgot another winner that we'll get into a little bit more, but Scotty Miller.
Yeah.
Scotty Miller out of nowhere. I haven't watched a lot of the wide receiver tape. I focus more on the offensive line, but I think he had more burst than Roman. Yeah. Not to take anything away from Roman Wilson, but I expected Roman Wilson to look fast. Goodness, Scotty Wilson had that. And I keep comparing him to like the Cedric Wilson of the Super Bowl run, where he just knows when to sit in a gap. And Hines Ward was great at that. And those kind of things. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers would love that, because that ball was coming out fast. I mean, really fast. I don't think I saw anything remotely close to that last season from the offense.
Yeah. No, that's very true. I saw this too. I thought this was interesting. Trey Essex said something subtle that Arthur Smith did well with his play calling that some might have missed. There are certain plays and protections that are more advantageous for an O-line than others. Boot and counter play action are two of those protections. It allows for the O-line to come off with controlled aggression and all but eliminates a chance for mental errors, because the O-line is either working all the same way or they have a gap, and that's it. For a young O-line to start the game out with two, quote, easy plays that allows them to still come off the ball with aggression goes a long way towards building that confidence and chemistry. And I thought that was interesting. I always appreciate seeing what Trey has to say. He's so knowledgeable. I thought that was huge. Chris Carter also gave Broderick Jones some credit, saying he wasn't dominant, but he did have a good showing against the Jaguars in that preseason game. He said it's the little things that are a good sign for his development as the team's projected left tackle of the future. So I think, look, right? Isn't that kind of what we all have to? We talked about all offseason. What you got to hope for, right, is that he's made that progress and he's ready. What you don't want to see is him come back out the same as he was last year, where nothing's changed. All you can ask for somebody is that they grow. We can't unflush the toilet of the previous seasons. So, if he's made progress and he's ready to go, I think that's a really good sign.
It is. And something that I noticed in preseason that I hope wasn't just a fluke. The biggest thing that Broderick said mentally last year is that if he started out with a bad snap or a bad rep, that was it. That was done. He was in his head from that point. He started out the preseason, and I still can't tell if it was him or Kenneth Gainwell's fault, but someone messed up something and he was just flat out beat. His first play, dude bounced back. I mean, it was like that play never happened. And that was not Broderick of old. So there's a comfortability there. There's a strength. There was one play where I think it was him and Spencer Anderson were next to each other, and either one of them could have taken the guy in front of him. And it was like he stepped in front of Spencer Anderson and wanted the contact. There was little things that I'm seeing that I completely agree with that make me hope that, because if anyone doesn't remember, when we took him and Trey, I was in the chat room with Trey Essex when we drafted Broderick Jones and traded up. I remember, and he said he's good, but he's a project. Yeah. And projects take some time. So if we're seeing him come around, I'm excited.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention Darnell Washington. I thought he had like a huge game, pardon the pun. I mean, the guy is ridiculous. I'm glad to see him getting involved. It looks like they plan to involve him a little bit more in that game. I think we've seen that in training camp too. That's a really nice thing to see. I don't know. I mean, Zach and I've talked about this on the show numerous times. Like, I don't know how you have a guy that's 6'8" or 7 or whatever he is, and you don't have him there in your end zone all the time to just literally put his hands up. He jumped to catch that one ball. He didn't need to jump. He was 2 feet higher than everybody around him, right? Just put his hands up and grab the ball. And how are we not using that weapon? So I was glad to see him looking like he was planned involvement. It wasn't like somebody got hurt and they had to scramble and put him in, or somebody was having a bad game or whatever it was, like we saw last year. So I thought that was good. I thought he was another real winner of the night. I think if we could get him more involved this season, I think that would benefit everybody. And I know Aaron Rodgers has said that he likes connecting with him. And so if they're building some chemistry, I think that's a good thing. It's the preseason, so I'm not like shitting on anybody. I don't want to dwell on negativity and be mired in the muck because it's the preseason. But was there anybody in that game, and I hate to use the word loser, but was there anybody that you were surprised about in a negative way? Like you expected a little more from, or you didn't quite see what you'd hoped to see?
Caleb Johnson's vision and hands.
Yeah.
And I know he was he specifically said he was using this game in his head just to get up to speed. He had no expectations, no goals, just get up to speed. So I understand that based on that. There are a few times I looked, I'm like, Hull was the other way. I could have seen that. And he had a dropped pass, missed pass protections. Which, by the way, that third one is going to be the most important to Mike Tomlin. If out of those three he has to fix one, it needs to be that, or he's never getting on the field because Jalen Warren's one of the best pass protectors on the team.
Yeah, it's true.
So
I heard people saying he looked like Najee, and look, as a huge Najee fan, that doesn't offend me, but I know they meant it as an insult, and I hate that for that kid. If it's true that this was really like him, just I just need to adjust to the speed of the game, right? And that's what this was, and that's all it was. Then you know what? I think that's great. I think that's a great approach to take to go into your first preseason game. If you can really do that, right? Like I'm somebody who gets in my head, I would struggle to do that. If he could really do that and just go into this game and not freak out over everything and kind of just, dip his toe in the pool, I think that's a really positive sign, right? That's pretty mature approach to playing football.
I do. And I think it made it a little easier for the coaches. I think they said, okay, well, Warren, and I think Jalen Warren knows too. And Caleb Johnson has to know as well. Like, okay, there's a pecking order here. If Caleb Johnson would have come out and had a Willie Parker in Buffalo at the end of the season kind of game, then yeah, we'd have been having a different thing. He didn't. He is a rookie who needs some work. We drafted him where we did for a reason. But he's not a first round pick kind of guy where we feel compelled to use him like maybe we overuse Najee early.
But hey, Ashton Genty didn't have a great first preseason game.
No.
So, I mean, his was not good. Now, look, his offensive line is also trash. But the way he was talked about coming out of college was like, you could have no offensive line and just hand him the ball and he could run over everybody and fly through the air. So, I think there is, when you're a rookie, when you're a young player, there's just still that growth that's needed. And so it's good that he has some time to learn behind Warren, who I think is a really good role model for a young running back in the league.
Oh, very much. And a last point about Washington, Darnell Washington. I think that's where you're going to see the difference between having Russell Wilson as a veteran quarterback and Aaron Rodgers as a veteran quarterback. I think Russell Wilson saw things in the office that needed changed, and I don't want to insult the guy, but I kind of imagine with his hands behind his back, it's like, well, gee, coach, I mean, if we could change these things, it'd be really good. But the team's first and all. Aaron Rodgers like, yeah, we're gonna fucking throw to Darnell. Right. So let's throw to Darnell. And that's the difference. And just so you know, from everything I've heard, if the thing was we're not throwing to Darnell, it's not what we're doing, Aaron Rodgers wouldn't say we're tearing up the playbook and all that. Right. We'll find a way to work with him. But there's going to be a difference. I'm not going to be able to look at this offense and say, well, I know we should do better. And thank goodness for that.
Right. And thank goodness for that. And so, look, at that same token, it is still early. We haven't even seen Aaron Rodgers really get out there yet. So like way too early to make any kind of predictions, but just what's coming across already in the media, there isn't that like head butting that seemed to be going on last year. Like, I gotta say Arthur Smith is a winner too, right? Like for a preseason game, his offense looked like they knew what they were doing, even though it was a preseason game. We didn't look like that last year. Like, I don't know if some of that was the challenges of dealing with different quarterbacks. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if it was because there was some head butting with Mike Tomlin and Mike needed to like cut him loose a little bit, but it felt much smoother for this first preseason game than I felt like last year's first preseason game felt. And it feels like Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers, from what people are saying, are finding their stride, and coming together. And maybe this is going to be something that helps to build the offense the way it should be, right? When a coordinator and a quarterback and a coach work together. So let's switch gears and talk about the wide receivers a little bit. Yeah. So I mentioned Roman Wilson. It was really good to see him be involved in that game, to look somewhat solid, for his first game out there. I think none of us really knew what to expect from him, given the like wacky things that were said about him last year. Like he couldn't learn the playbook and stuff and couldn't put him on a moving train and whatever else. He looked fine. I thought, totally serviceable wide receiver. That made me like breathe a sigh of relief a little bit, right? But that's not a wasted draft pick. Maybe that season last year where he got to be there and learn and spend time with the team without the pressure of being on the field, maybe that's something that actually helped him.
I think so. And I'm in a very, very different place with this wide receiver group than I was. I was hopeful, and deep in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if I have any reason to be. I'm just going to be hopeful for the sake of being hopeful. Yeah. But if you would have told me that there's a chance Robert Woods might not make this roster, and that's legitimate, I would be over the moon, because we should be beating Robert Woods out. And I've heard that between Calvin Austin Jr. and Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson and Scotty Miller and all that. And then you have Keyshawn Williams that you said had a brilliant showing in this crowded room. Brock Taylor has been a training camp darling. This is a really crowded wide receiver room where everyone seems desperate to prove themselves. And I didn't see any of that last year. I just saw people come in and say, well, guys, no one really believes in us. Let's go out and get them. And that's
we
it.
had a whole bunch of guys last year that were like on the train cars, like the last stop on the short railroad. You know what I mean? Where like you don't have many more opportunities. Like some of those guys, like they were there to prove themselves. Being Jefferson Relic's not here to defend his boy. Like Van Jefferson, like some of those other guys. Like this is your chance, right? Like you've never quite made it in the NFL, and here's your chance to like. We need you. We have George Pickens and nobody, we need you. And you just didn't get that like sense of urgency from those guys. Calvin Austin, yes, but the rest of them, not so much.
You did. And the Steelers, from everything that I saw, are going to keep 5 wide receivers. So you got DK Metcalf, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller. There's one more. And I haven't even mentioned Max Hurlman or Lance McCutcheon yet. They're both out there. This is everything I wanted. There's so much competition in this room. And Mike Tomlin has to be so happy about this. Yeah. Mike Tomlin thrives on competition. And if it's not there, he'll create it. But when it happens naturally.
Ultimate 2 dogs, 1 bone. Like this is what he lives for. This is that situation. You're right. I'm sure he's like geeked. I hope he makes the right choice. He's way smarter than I am. I have no idea what that right choice should be. He's seeing it every day. But man, it feels hard to choose. This is like standing in front of the cookie counter, right? In a Pittsburgh bakery. Like they're all so good. Like they all seem better than I expected. Yeah.
Now, the only thing that I'm looking at is between Scotty Miller, CA3, and Roman Wilson, those are 3 small receivers. And not a lot of offenses use that many. I mean, you think about guys like Wes Welker and all that, there's like specific air. So I'm not sure about all 3 of them being there. I think if one of those bubble guys do get in and they're on the same line as someone else, height, it might come down to height. It might come down to something that's out of people's control. So if for any reason any Steeler wide receivers are watching this right now, all I can tell you, keep doing what you're doing and stay healthy. That's all you can do right now because you're probably not going to be able to have much of a say in it other than that.
Yeah. I saw a couple people on Twitter who think that there might even be a chance that maybe Calvin Austin isn't on this team this year with the way some of those other guys played. Now, look, this is fan conjecture, right? This is not coming from any like legitimate credentialed sources that I saw. It was just, fans feeling like some of these other guys were even better. And I thought that was interesting. I had never occurred to me when I made my list in my head. It was your exact same list with that one spot left over. And, who will that be, right? Is interesting. But some talented guys, and they're showing in training camp, whether it works for them with the Steelers, it'll work for them with some team in the NFL because other teams will see what they did. And whoever doesn't make it to the 53-man roster, some other team will snatch them up because there were some strong showings.
There really were. And I mean, I can't see Calvin Austin cut. If he's not on the team, I can see him traded, like maybe as trade bait for something, or like I said, we have a ton of draft picks. We want to move up to next year. Maybe he's used in that, but it wouldn't take much. It's just like paper thin between all these wide receivers that if one little thing happens, everything is switched up. The only thing we know for sure is DK Metcalf. That's it. We know one thing for sure, and I feel really good about it despite that. I mean, genuinely a lot of confidence in this, and it has nothing to do with the quarterbacks. I would feel this confident if Mason Rudolph was the quarterback one. This is just a really potential filled wide receiver room rather than a bunch of guys hoping that this last chance is going to be a good one.
Yeah. Speaking of Mason Rudolph, he has been such a delight to watch him back with the Steelers this second time. It's almost like our little boy went away and growed up and come back, and he's like flourished, like he's blossomed, like he's almost like a different person. He's always been very kind, very genuine, very, all of those things, very nice, with the media, all of those things. He's always been that way. But like the Ben years, he always seemed annoyed, frustrated, you know what I mean? Like unsure of his place, like not quite, he didn't have that appeal. They weren't talking to him that much because we had Ben, but when they did talk to him, it felt like, Mason was aggravated a lot. And then, he kind of saw him come out of his shell a little bit when he led us on that winning season. You saw him come out of his shell, and then he went to Tennessee, but he came back, and man, he has been such a great leader on this team. To see him out there, working with these young guys, this offense, it's been fantastic. His relationship with Aaron Rodgers is surprising and fun to watch. That the two of them are getting along so well and supporting each other so nicely. I think that's been really nice to see, because I think especially Rodgers doesn't always come in with that, you don't think he's going to be that guy that's going to come in and be that support person in the QB1 role. And Mason, frankly, didn't have like the best role model in Ben, right? So, I mean, Mason didn't get to be Charlie Batch to somebody. So, yeah, I think it's been very cool to watch.
That's a good point. I also think Mason, it's not just this year that I think Mason's excited about, which explains some of the, not attitude change, but maybe his experience is different in Pittsburgh this time. He's looking down the road too, because Mark Caboli was on 93.7 a few days ago doing some free association, and they said, Mark, 2026, who's the Steelers starter? He's like, Mason Rudolph. And they thought, they're like, what? He's like, they're going to bring someone in, and the way the Steelers operate, unless they trade everything to get a top 3 quarterback, they're going to take someone who is their future but needs to sit, and they will turn to Mason. And I think somewhere in there, Mason knows that right now the Steelers are looking a little to him. Like, okay, your job is going to be what Ben never did for you next. Aaron is doing it for you. You are going to do it next. And that has to be exciting for someone at this stage of Mason's career, because, I mean, I know he didn't want to leave Pittsburgh, and Tennessee was not the best, result. So I'm just excited. I agree. It's a lighter Mason, less on his shoulders there. And he's rocking that facial hair.
Yeah, I love it. That's a really good way to phrase it, like a lighter Mason, because that is how he feels. Like he's not carrying this like heavy burden or whatever you want to call it. He just seems like a changed guy. So that's been really cool to watch. So training camp is wrapping up. The guys were out there in pads today. It was hot as hell in Latrobe. So that was kind of funny to watch some of the little video clips, the few little clips and pictures we got to see. So before we end this show, what is your like overall sense of how things went with camp? Did you feel like you got a good look at what you wanted to see? Do you feel more or less optimistic than you did before camp started?
Oh, I definitely feel more optimistic. I think Mike Tomlin got exactly what he wanted, which is ridiculously hot days. So the team is going to be ready to play in ridiculous. It was a 103 feel in Latrobe today on that field. I am genuinely optimistic about all of it. We're healthy. Considering everything, I know we've had some injuries, and no offense to Dean Lowry, no offense to the tight end that we lost. It wasn't anybody that is irreplaceable. And the amount of teams out there that are having people go down that are changing seasons, we're not one of them. So I am honestly knock
on wood, because holy cow, some of those injuries are just heartbreaking.
They are, and I will say this, at least now that training camp's done, there are a few things more frustrating to me than a training camp injury. At least preseason is a step up. So now that's all. Just no one pull a bench, stay off motorcycles, stay off ATVs, don't go scuba diving, don't just sit in a house, in a room, stare at a wall, and then get ready to kick off. That's what I'm asking from everybody.
God, if you're watching, don't send us any preseason injuries either. We don't need any injuries. That's not what Zach meant. He's not looking for that since we escaped training camp one. No injuries. It would be really nice to go into a season and have everybody be healthy and available and be able to really see what this team looks like. It's been so frustrating the past couple of years to be like, oh, well, he's good, but only if we only had our offensive line the way it was supposed to be, or if we only had this person or that person. So it'll be really nice. It would be really nice this season to be able to start the season healthy and really have these guys see what these guys can do together. I think they're a motivated group.
Oh, I do. And I think we're going to get to the point where when that week one kicks off, we're going to have Chris Boswell and Cam Heyward with either new contracts or shifted contracts to give them the money they want, and everyone will be fine. Yep. That's all I'm looking for, and we're heading the right direction. I wish my hopes weren't as high as they are, but they really are starting to get up there, and yeah.
We probably should have done our like season picks before all of this, because like I went from like 10 wins to 11 wins, and I'm like, we might win 15 games this season. Like, Leanne needs to calm down a little bit. Well, if you watched the show tonight, we really, really appreciate you joining us. I'm going to say happy almost birthday to Zach again. Thank you, Vicky, for joining us tonight. Can't forget Zach's birthday. If you're watching, please do us a favor and like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. It really helps us out, get out there to other Steelers fans. We see our viewership growing a little bit each week, and we love that, and we appreciate all of you that watch. But when you guys like the podcast or subscribe to the podcast, it really does help other Steeler fans to find it at random. You can also follow Zach and I on X or Twitter, whatever you're calling it these days, as well as the Steel City Huddle podcast. And if you're catching this after we already filmed it, let us know. We want to hear in the comments, or send us a DM or shout us out on Twitter. Who were your winners and losers in that preseason game? What do you think of the way training camp wrapped up? And what's your opinion of Cam in this situation? Should we be paying Boz? Should we be paying Cam? What do you think will happen? And who do you think that last wide receiver will be? I'm curious to hear who fans think will be our wide receiver core when the season finally kicks off. Anyways, everybody, have a great night. We will see you again next Tuesday.
Leanne and Zach would like to thank you for tuning in to the Steel City Huddle podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing.